Okay, so we decided now we would everyone misses you, Amy. So we're going to talk about throwing a little bit bigger, and I'm going to do 5 pounds, and I have divided that into 2 chunks. Typically for 5 pounds I don't really need to divide it up, but I just want to show you guys how I can do 17 pounds. Because
no, you can't.
Because you're a badass.
No, this is how you do it. This is working smarter, not harder.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So I divide it up. I center a little bit at a time. So this is what, 2 pounds or something. And I recognize that 2 pounds can be a challenge sometimes too, and I'm not trying to be dismissive of that. But, you know, I think most everyone can center 2 pounds pretty well. So if you can center 2, you can center 5. You can center 15 with a little practice. So I'm just getting this thing centered and ready for its baby brother to be put on its back. So I'm not gonna put the next one right on top of this, but first I gotta get the slip off because I don't want slip trapped in there. And I wanna make sure I don't have any negative airspace. So I'm gonna kind of push the outside down so that I don't have an inward shape on there, because I don't want I don't want air stuck in there. I want to create an air bubble for myself.
Can you talk a little more about what you just did? Because when I tried to do that today, and I ended up not with a flat surface. So
I pushed the outside down a little bit. I had a little divot in the middle. Did you see that? So I pressed down and then outward a little bit, just so it's slightly convex.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'm really going to dry my hands so I don't get my next piece of clay wet. So now same thing here. Just kind of getting it sort of roundish when I do this. And I'm also making sure I don't have any, like, I'm not gonna trap any air. So I gotta get rid of any negative, again, any negative, whatever you call that, spots or whatever. Okay, that's fine. Okay. And I just set it on there, just kind of. Now this is the funny part. I just kind of go around and I just sort of, I'm pushing the outside sort of down to join the other one. And now I'm doing this just to kind of get them joined a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to center this upper one. And I'm continuing it down into the bottom one, but the bottom one's already centered. So this ends up being like coning, I guess. When you're kind of bringing it up and down and up and down.
Is it important to make sure you cone down far enough to include the parts at the top?
And you wouldn't want to like cone part of the way and then stop. You would always want to integrate all of the clay. So I'm kind of pushing downward and kind of making sure that everybody's playing nice. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'll do one more lift. And when I'm doing this, when I'm coming upward, I am pushing here and I'm pulling here and squeezing with this. So I'm almost scooping to pull it up with my lower fingers. So it comes up. Now I'm going to prepare to throw it, so I'm pushing it all back down with trying to keep sort of a flat top and sort of control this flange on the outside and get it integrated. Okay. So if I'm going to make a planter, I'm going to want this to be a little bit wider puck. So now I'm going to flatten the top and bring the whole thing a little bit wider, because I think a 5-pound planter would be maybe this tall. I don't know. I'm just going to make it a little wider. Pushing down the top, controlling the outward motion of the side. My bat is clicking a little, probably because I've got probably a little bit of a loose. Sometimes these just get loose. Okay, so I'm gonna come a little bit lower. So I want it to be about as the width of the base of the thing I'm trying to make. Now this is the part that's tricky for me throwing big, is that hole. Now I'm gonna drill in and pull outward, but when I pull outward, it kind of folds up on itself and is in danger of trapping slip. So this part takes me a little while. I do it really carefully. So I'm gonna drill in. Oof, it's hard clay. Use my sponge. My sponge really helps stabilize my finger. Because I'm like having to put a lot of force on it, so it just helps stabilize my fingers so I can really use a lot of pressure. Okay, so now I'm gonna start pulling outward. Now you see I'm getting that big lip that's threatening to fold over on itself. So I stop, then I fold it, I push this thing back up so it doesn't come down and trap slip down here. So I'm gonna just push it back and down. Okay. I've got some of this flim flam slip here that came out. That'll wreck my pot. So I'm gonna continue pulling outward, and I'm gonna probably have more flange. What? Ooh, close. Thanks, Hope. All right. So I'm gonna continue to pull it outward, just slowly and steady, pulling towards my belly, not going beyond the diameter of the original base. I'm just gonna like flatten out the base a little bit, back and forth. I'm sort of giving some pressure and compressing to help avoid S-cracks. Open it up a little bit wider. Okay, that's a good base, I'm happy with that. Now I've got some funky shaped sides, and I don't like to start pulling until I've got, there's that drawing up there after number 2. If we cut this thing in half, the cross section should show like nice straight sides and a nice flat top, but this is all wonky. So I'm gonna correct that. And this is just what I like to do. I'm gonna correct it by pushing with this pressure from this flat surface right here. Just dead pressure. Okay, and now I'm gonna press down this little guy up here. Just kind of like just letting my hand ride here so I can know what's happening where I can't see. So I'm just squaring this thing off so it's just a better starting point for me when I go to start throwing. All right, there. Okay, so now I'm going to attempt to pull it straight upward, and I may do some shaping later, but again, the first goal is to get as much clay upward as possible. So to do that, I mean, I've got, the wall right now is that thick. So I've got a lot of pulls to do, but I'm really gonna be pulling inward so that it counteracts the outward force of centrifugal force. Force of centrifugal. Okay, so I've just, my knuckles rest together so that my hands are working together. And I always have my sponge in my outer hand, and I'm kind of pushing a little more on the outside than I am on the inside. And I'm really pushing, kind of guiding the whole thing inward for now. I'm gonna tidy my rim, compress it. That's just maintenance that I do when I'm throwing. Now the base down here is still that thick. So again, my finger's just gonna ride on the inside while my outside finger is getting some of this clay scooped upward. I'm just dead pressing on it. There, now my inner finger is coming up. I'm slowing down just so I can kind of keep tabs on what's going on. All right, looking good so far. But you can see how much my first pull was tilted inward and now this one is not. And that may be just the way I'm accidentally pushing it, but there's that too. Okay. Again, I'm kind of scooping some up from the base. And straight upward. You can see how I've got my thumb anchored on my right hand. And I'm really using this whole kind of like, I've seen people that are throwing really big, throw with this right here, this big surface, just because sometimes when you have a lot of clay, it's too hard to do with one fingertip. So I just use this whole finger. Some people do this, you know, with their knuckle. It's whatever works for you. So now I'm starting to tilt outward just ever so slightly. And it's not that bad yet, so I'm not gonna collar it. But now I gotta manage, I've got about 3/4 inch at the base. I've got probably 1/2 inch right here. So I'm gonna try to get that base thinned out a little. Get some of that, more of that clay pressed up into the pot. Or pulled into the pot, I should say. Finger is anchored on my right hand. Personally, I like to, especially for planters, I like to leave bulk at the rim. So it's thinner down here than it is up here. And compress that rim for maintenance. All right, I'm gonna get the lake out of the bottom. Okay, now I need to assess. Where am I at with this? Well, let's see, I can tell by looking straight down the wall like this that it's still got some thickness down there, but that's okay because, you know, I'm gonna be trimming that, so it's not real bad, but I may try and get a little more of that clay up. But other than that, I think I've pulled it up about as much as I want to pull it up. I'm gonna do actually one more little pull just to see if I can. Slow it down so that if things start to go awry, I have a better chance at correcting it before it totally goes awry. Okay. Gentle release. Okay. Compress the rim. Now I'm happy with it. I feel like I'm utilizing all the clay that I can. Now I can look at shape and yada yada. I'm just gonna pretend like I'm gonna fuss around with the shape all I want. But now it comes down to, now I wanna throw a base for it. So I'm gonna be using this little friend again. But before I measure the base, I'm gonna cut off this flange. And I usually use one of these tools that has like the knife on one end and this, whatever this is. I cut straight down, so I'm not cutting inward, I'm cutting straight down. I'm tilting it this way, but it's literally moving up and down. It's not moving at an angle. So it's gonna be moving downward. And I'm gonna hold it really tight, and I'm just doing like a pre-trim. So I'm lowering my tool till it hits the wheel. I'm gonna turn it over, and I'm gonna cut this part off of the bat with this little knife. I'm gonna anchor it. I'm gonna hang on to this tool with this finger so it can't get pulled. There we go. I really always like to take these off and look at them. When they don't get squished, sometimes they're super pretty. I actually fired a bunch of those once, it was fun. And then I threw them away. It's 5 years later. Because I didn't know what to do with them. Okay. So this is pretty good. I'm gonna shape it a little more. I like to have a really smooth outside, so I usually do my shaping by pushing on the inside. See, it's coming outward, but I also like to catch with this to get the slip off. So the rib on the outside is just kind of following along where the sponge is going. There. And be careful to, before you do it, you know, move on, sit back and look at it from the side and make sure that it's a silhouette that you like. Okay, so finishing is done. Now I'm going to measure it. If you have a really big based pot, obviously this thing's not gonna work, but it should work here. And obviously some of this is gonna get trimmed in, so you know, it doesn't have to be an exact fit when it's a saucer, but we wanna get sort of an idea. So, measuring, obviously. Okay, so there's my measurement. Okay, I'm gonna cut this guy off and take it off. And that's what's nice about using a bat. You can just remove it. And, oh, I think I can stick it here. Okay, I'm gonna get another bat. Okay. All right. Now I'm gonna go for the water catcher saucer thing. I don't know if I have enough clay or not. Guess we'll see.
How much clay do you have approximately on that?
Maybe 2 pounds. Maybe 2 pounds. So I'm pushing it downward. This is back to making a plate, like how to make a flat. So I usually just kind of do this to bring it outward. Christy uses her arm to flatten it out. It's whatever works best for your body. So as I'm pushing it out, I'm using this hand actively to manage, you know, to push the clay that's coming out downward. I don't want it to just come out like above the base and then just flop over. So I'm using this to make sure it meets the bat. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it does. A big air bubble there. Okay. So I'm actually pretty close. That's great. So now I can just probably bring up the sides and I'll be golden. Because I know I'm going to trim the base of the planter is going to be slightly narrower anyway, so I'll have plenty of room. Get rid of this. Okay, so now I'm just gonna, it's still pretty thick to be a planter base, so I'm just gonna thin it a little bit. I'm just gonna, doing the, just a nice, slow, steady pull. Now I'm gonna stop and measure. It's pretty close. All right, that's good. So you saw what I did there. I scooped some of that clay that had gotten shoved out. I was scooping it back inward, just shoving it in while I'm trying to hold my spot on the inside. Okay. By the time I cut this off, it is going to be pretty thin at the base. So next time I might use a little bit more clay. And then you throw this side however you like them to be. I like a little more room for water to pool in the bottom, so I like it a little bit higher. I'm just going to do one final check and make sure I didn't push it inward. Good. Okay. last thing I like to do is just take my rib and just kind of compress this all and kind of get some of the slip cleaned up. There. Okay. Any questions?
So is it just a matter of preference as far as how much room you want to give between your plate and the bottom of the planter?
You mean here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm doing this, I did it exactly, because my personal, well, it came out quite a bit too, which is fine. But my personal preference is that there's not a huge gap between the saucer and the side of the pot. Just push it a little bit. And I like it to be a little bit higher so I can get lots of water in there. All right, yeah, and then I'm gonna cut this off also and let it dry on here and then trim it tomorrow.
Tomorrow's when you'll poke the holes on the bottom of the planter.
When I'm trimming it, yeah, I will trim a hole in the middle.
Are you gonna put a foot so that it drains?
Well, yep. You don't have to though. The water's gonna find its way out. But I have enough, I might have enough clay at the bottom to make a foot, otherwise not. So, you guys wanna try a planter? I mean, you could make a planter, you could make a larger bowl if you want, whatever you wanna do. I'd like you to try that, like, adding on a couple of pieces of clay. So, if you want to. Thanks.